Thank you so much. It's very exciting for us. The long wait is finally over. Welcome on board, everyone, to the JWF's Media and Journalism webinars. I am Cemre Ülker, the UN representative of the Journalism Writers Foundation. Once again, it's a great pleasure to have everyone here today. This is our first session. And I'm sure the certificate program will be a great success with wonderful speakers on board and of course with your active and meaningful participation. Before I leave it to Mehmet Kılıç, the president of the Journalism Writers Foundation, for his opening remarks, I have a couple reminders that I would like to share with everyone. So foremost, let's make sure to keep ourselves muted because we are a big group here for the upcoming 5 sessions. Unless you would like to make any contribution or any questions in the Q&A sessions too, we would love to have your active participation. And for a better communication, that would be great if you can keep your cameras on, if possible, of course. And we would love to have your active comments, questions, feedbacks on the chat too. Please introduce yourselves. This is a great opportunity to network. You can share your social media accounts, share your organization, title information, as we have colleagues from different parts of the world, countries joining this program. And lastly, I kindly remind everyone that this is a safe dialogue platform, and I would appreciate all the participants to base their reflection, comments on a foundation of respect and inclusivity, of course. In the meantime, as I will ask Mehmet to keep it on with his welcome remarks, I will be sharing our Twitter accounts and our speakers as well. So please use this opportunity to broaden your network and tag us in your tweets so we can retweet and share your profiles as well for the meaningful and engaging discussions. Mehmet, please, the floor is yours.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to you all joining us from all around the world. And welcome to our first session of the Media and Journalism webinar series organized by the Journalists and Writers Foundation. And the JWF is an international civil society organization dedicated to the culture of peace, human rights, and sustainable development. We are based here in New York and also associated with the UN Department of Global Communications. Let me give you a little background about the Media and Journalism webinars. So we organize Media and Journalism webinars, which is a certificate program that emphasize experiential and hands-on learning through intensive webinars, training, mentorship, and interactive discussions with professional journalists. And today we have 3 professional journalists with us. This program aims to prepare you as journalism students and young professionals to succeed in building a career while fostering experiential learning by translating knowledge and skills into experience. And we have amazing speakers today with us. The program also involves research, interviews, and article writing that lead to meaningful understanding of journalism, communications, and media professions, and we will talk more about this project towards the end of the program. So today's webinar is about building a career in freelance journalism. And our host is Yazid Kamelian. He's an amazing freelance journalist, and he's an amazing, great friend of us. Welcome, Yazid. Before giving it to you, I would like to just provide you a background about Yazid. Yazid Kamelian is a journalist from Cape Town, South Africa, who has worked in print, radio, television, and documentary filmmaking. He has lived and reported from various countries, including conflict zones such as Yemen, Syria, and Gaza Strip. He is a founding member of the International Association of Religion Journalists, which aimed at promoting accuracy and fairness in religion reporting, which is very important. And Yazid also is a part of the Global Exchange on Religion in Society, a 2-year project funded by the European Union, set up to facilitate global conversation on diversity, coexistence, and social inclusion He's currently based in New York. He's currently based in the US, joining us from Seattle. Yazid, welcome again. You have the floor.
Thank you so much, Mehmet and Chemre, for the introductions. We really appreciate it. Yes, I am definitely excited that we are starting today. Welcome to all the participants. I can tell you that we have been working on this program for months, and of course, we have lined up some really interesting speakers for the 5 sessions that we are going to be hosting. And I can tell you that, firstly, I'm looking at the names, and it's amazing to see all of you here. And just to acknowledge that we do have the chat as well. One of our participants says that they're down with COVID, and we hope you get well soon, Morten from Denmark. The other names, wow, it's so interesting just to welcome all of you. I'm not going to mention all the names, but I'm just going to say the names that I'm seeing. It's wonderful. I'm seeing Rachel, Rahma, Karima, Vaside, I hope I've got that right, Abdullah, Ozgun. Wow, just a lot of interesting names. So the aim of this series is to connect you guys. It's to connect you to people who have experience in journalism, but also to be able to share the insights on how you can navigate your path in what is a very exciting career. Our first panel today will be focusing on freelance journalism, and I'm going to welcome our 2 speakers for today. Jordan, hello.
Hello. Hey, I'm Jordan Gaspore. It's good to be here. I'm sitting in my bedroom in Queens, New York right now.
Jordan, it's wonderful that this is finally happening, right?
Exactly. It's been a couple of months since I last saw you.
Yeah, it's been a while, and now we're finally launching today. And we also have Abdullah, who is our other speaker. Abdullah, you and I have spoken before when we talked about journalism and particularly conflict journalism. Welcome again, Abdullah.
Well, thank you. I'm glad to be here. From Sweden, it's not sunny as usual.
Yeah, you're phoning in from Sweden, I think.
Right.
Yeah. So those will be our 2 guest speakers today, and the format is going to be conversational. I'll be asking them a couple of questions, and they'll be talking and reflecting about their experience as a freelance journalist. We welcome you, of course, to post your questions as well. You can post them in the chat section. There will be time for you to ask those questions. Once you've posted it, I'll just indicate in the time, that you can ask the question. But let's start with a basic question. Jordan and Abdullah, freelance journalism. Let's just talk about what that means to you and what it is. Jordan, do you mind sharing, what does it mean to be a freelance journalist?
Yeah, there's a lot of pros and cons of what I think about with freelance journalism, but a pro is it gives you more freedom to do the kinds of reporting that I at least personally want to do and could not do by working full-time at one publication. So there's freedom to do the kinds of reporting you want to do, freedom to travel, freedom in a lot of different respects, and freedom of movement. I will say one negative, at least in the United States, that is a downside, and I think a barrier for some folks, is that you don't get health insurance through your employer, and so you have to navigate liability insurance and other things that we can talk about later on. But there are some negatives to it. But overall, I've chosen to be freelance twice now at different periods of my life, and as of right now, I can't see going back to a full-time desk job with one publication. So I highly recommend trying out freelancing.
Mm-hmm. So Jordan, have you started out working full-time though? It sounds like you've worked full-time as well. You said twice you've gone into freelance journalism.
I have, yeah. I've worked at different places, full-time salaried positions before, but I will say I've never worked for one company for more than 2.5 years, almost 3 years. I've left after that time to pursue freelance, and then freelance for a year or two. And then there was a time when I went back when I worked at CNN, and I was there for about 1.5 years, and then I quit to do freelance, and that's what I'm doing right now.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay, I'm definitely going to ask you as a follow-up question about the dynamics, the differences that you have found. But let's go to Abdullah and hear from him as well. Abdullah, can you tell us about your work as a freelance journalist, please?
Sure. In contrast to what Jordan said, we have universal health coverage in Sweden, so I'm not worried much about that respect. But I agree with her. There are a lot of pros and cons when it comes to doing and pursuing freelance journalism. I work in the mainstream, media with a huge organizational capacity. There are a lot of advantages to do that. You have a huge army of editors, reporters, logistical departments, photo department as such that support your work. So you can really focus on your content, research, in interviews and others. But as a freelance, which I have been doing since I was forced into exile in Sweden in the last 6 years, you have to do everything by yourself. Me and my colleagues, only 2 reporters working on the Nordic Monitor website. So you put up the photographs, you write a caption, you edit the articles, you shoot the other guy, to take another look at your article. So it's, you do everything, nuts and the bolts, from A to Z. But you time your own work, you schedule your own calendar, you're sort of free from those strings attached working with the mainstream organizational media. But there are other drawbacks as well, which I have faced when I was working on several articles a couple of years back. When you used to work for a media outlet, you're also covered, perhaps that's nothing to do with the health insurance, but the liability insurance in terms of the legal litigation. I face a couple of ones, defamation charges, because when you write about people who have a deep pockets, a lot of resources, financial resources, they come after you wherever you are, whether you're in Sweden, London, or New York, it doesn't matter. They hire lawyers. They have a network of law firms across the world. So they reach out to you, try to censor your article, try to shape your article. So I face those challenges as well. When you're faced that, you have to have financial resources and the professional help to be able to fight off those frivolous lawsuits. It's a basis because you did a lot of vigilance before you write your article. You do a lot of research before you put it out there. But still, when you face illegal challenges, lawsuits, it costs you not just money-wise, but also as a timing issue, because your precious time is devoted to fight off those frivolous basis charges. So there is I think another challenge when you're working as a freelance. Perhaps we can talk more, and do a follow-up with your questions.
So I think I want to, there was a lot of information from both of you, but I just want to slow it down a bit because I'd like to go back to the basics, right? So how does one even become a freelance journalist? Because remember, we are talking to some participants who are only starting out in this thing called journalism. Jordan, let's go back to you. Did you start out first initially working full time? And would you advise that?
So I actually started my journalism career freelancing while I was in high school and in college to make extra money. I was in journalism in high school, I was in journalism in college. So I was exposed already to people like, guests like in events like this that would come by the high school or college, and I would approach people that were guests and keep their cards and be able to pitch to them and contact them. Very good at keeping an ongoing list of people that I had met in the industry and where I met them. So when I followed up with them, I could say exactly, you came to X university on this date, I was in that audience, and you said X thing that really impressed me or really stood out to me. And, are you accepting freelance pitches? And it just snowballed from there. I got a lot of rejections. I still get rejections, obviously, but early days, a lot of rejections. But I think some folks thought it was cute that, a 16-year-old was pitching them a story. So, I
okay, wait.
accepted.
Jordan, that's amazing. You were in high school and you knew that you were going to do this journalism thing and you just started pitching stories.
Unfortunately, I've known I wanted to be a journalist since I was 8 years old. So, yeah, I started pitching stories, and it was a way to, get my work out there. But I also thought, this is a great way to make connections later on. And it didn't pay well. And it's really funny to see that sometimes some publications back in my home state of Texas, they still pay the same rate that I was getting paid in 2006 for stories when I've gone back to them recently for different things. But that's a side note. But yes, I started my career freelancing, and it was to be able to see, is this a career that I want to continue to pursue professionally? And is this something I want to continue doing and be a part of my life? So yeah, I was doing that while I was going to school.
That's amazing. So when it comes to even back then, I think you understood that networking is, maybe you subconsciously did it, but you just knew networking is going to be vital. And I think that's such an important thing to remember as a journalist. Every person is a potential story. Every person is a contact, right?
Correct. Yeah, no, definitely. And I mean, it was, that was sort of the journalism beginner class in high school that I remember my teacher just telling us over and over again. And she was very frank about journalism being, oftentimes it's more about who you know than it is necessarily about your talent. But if you are talented, that's also very good too. And that'll keep you in journalism longer. But it is a lot about who you know. So.
So one of the things though, and I'm going to share about my own experience because I've also worked full-time and freelance, and pretty much a very similar, starting out as a student journalist at a newspaper, doing an internship, and then going on to work for that newspaper for a few more years, and then eventually freelancing. But where did you learn the skills of journalism though? You started out, in school, pitching, because those professional skills are also needed. So where did you learn that, and how did that work out for you?
Yeah, I mean, I started learning those skills in high school. We were, lucky enough to have a high school journalism program. And so we had an actual class that was an elective that I took, and that was the beginning that we actually had a formal class. And so 4 years for high school, took journalism classes, decided I wanted to major in journalism, 4 more years of journalism classes as an undergrad, went to grad school eventually, took another year of journalism classes. I continuously have wanted to keep learning about journalism. And I think that's one of the great things is that you think you might be done learning about this profession, but there's always something new to learn about.
Yeah, I think when the technology shifts happen at such a rapid pace, it forces you to just be like, I need to learn this new thing. I need to find out about this new platform.
Exactly. And also too, my interests in journalism have changed over the years. So, my interest in data journalism. So I did not learn that in high school. So I needed to learn that and, pursue that in different avenues, but different things, different investigations call for different things that I had no idea about when I was 16. So.
So let's go back to Abdullah. So Abdullah, did you work full time, and how did that help you? Because I think there's something about, at least for me, I think there's something about working in the industry that you pick up certain things with it, understanding the ecosystem and how we fit in as journalists. We are the people who make the content. We are the people who go out and find the stories. These are skills that you learn through experience. You have to do it. It's not something that you're just going to be able to pick up by sitting and watching a YouTube video or coming to a webinar like this. It's something that you actually have to do. And with that, comes the exposure and the experience. So did you work full time at any point, and would you advise that?
Well, I started as a freelancer actually when I was doing my master's in Columbia International School. But back in 90s, the journalism department at the Columbia, they had much better computers with bigger Mac screens. So I spent most of my time in the journalism department rather than my own department on the international affairs. That's how I get caught with this journalism, starting writing freelance article, pitching stories back to the newspaper in Turkey. But after I experimented on the field, learning the ropes, then yes, I started working as a full-time for a largest national daily in Turkey. As I said before, a lot of advantages for working as a huge newspaper with a lot of resources. You can spend almost a month, perhaps a longer, to do digging on a story that you are trying to write, trying to get different sources to collaborate your story. But there are also sort of organizational hindrance or bureaucracy, perhaps you can call it, a corporate structure. You are not 100% free because you are only one piece in a huge organizational framework. But when you're doing as a freelancing, you decide pretty much everything yourself. So first I started as a freelance by choice, then work full-time for an organization back in Turkey. Then I experimented with running my own media outlet. When the Turkish government seized the newspaper back in Turkey, I said, well, this is enough. I can run my own media outlet with a small investigative reporter. So I experimented with that one as well. It was actually working pretty good at the time with a very capable, very talented professional investigative journalist doing a lot of impact on the public debate. But that was shut down by the government. Then I was forced to move into Sweden. So my freelance on the second tour, it wasn't by a choice. It was by a coercion by the Turkish government. So that's how you do it with lots of challenges on the different level. But if you're hard into this profession, you do it no matter what, whether you work as a freelancer or a media outlet in a broadcast, print, or the website. As long as you generate a good content, I think that's the key. Then you generate a lot of interest to your story. So I think that's the key. It's not just working as a freelancer or for major media outlet. You need to do all the nuts and the bolts. Try to stretch yourself to the limit sometime to be able to find a scoop and then develop the story from there, and you create an added value that many people perhaps in the future will refer to your article, or you inspire others to write articles, because when you're working on a story, you have a set of angle, you have a limited context perhaps, but when you put it out, eventually publish the story, perhaps another journalist, whether as a freelancer or working for a media outlet as a full-time, they pick up on your story and they complete missing pieces in your story. They complement each other. Perhaps that's why the European Union in the last a decade, they started funding a cross-border journalism, because you match with a different group of investigative journalists. Everybody is working on a story which has extended to different countries, especially if you're working on organized crime. Most of the time it's across the borders. They earn money in one country, they stash in another one, they move all over the places. So you cannot do it by sitting in one country. You need to do either traveling a lot, or you need to work with other journalists to generate a more complete story on the topic that you are working. So it's a lot of experiences you actually gain on the field, not by studying in the journalism school. Of course, there's a lot of theoretical aspect. There's a lot of principles and the values you learn by going to the school. But the key is actually is working on the field. That's how you gain experience.
Thank you so much, Abdullah. And I believe Yazid is having a little connection problem. So I saw Rana's question, and just like you were mentioning about your experiences with the grad school, Rana, would you like to step in and ask your question yourself? So both Jordan and Abdullah can answer while we have Yazid back.
Yes, hello everyone. Can you hear me? Is that okay?
Yes, we hear you.
Okay. So my question is about the journalism grad schools. I think you've already mentioned a little bit about whether they are useful or not. But are they worth it? And what do you actually learn when you go to grad school?
I'll jump in and be the pessimist that if I could have done it over again, I would have saved my year in grad school and just gone to the UK instead of grad school and freelance there under a traditional visa program, and just worked instead of going to grad school. But that was my experience. I didn't think that it was all that beneficial. So the thing is, I guess I'll preface that I didn't think it was beneficial for me because I already had an undergraduate degree in journalism, and I felt like it was a rehash of what I had already learned. Now, for those who do not have an undergrad degree in journalism or have not had formal journalism training, it might have been different for those folks.
Perhaps I can jump in as well. I mean, from the experience, a lot of reporters worked for me in Ankara when I was a bureau chief for the newspaper. A couple of them got actually a Fulbright, scholarship, and then went to the Columbia Journalism School. So perhaps, but they work on the field for several years before they jump into the grad school on the journalism field. It gives you a different perspective, that's for sure. It gives you perhaps more visibility and credibility as well. Because remember, the credibility is the most precious commodity any journalist could have. And I know from the experience, because the Turkish government tried to undermine my credibility all the time by dumping all sort of different and baseless charges against me. So you need to stick to the core values of the journalism. Gain some experience on the field, but if you want to pursue further on the field, perhaps it helps. Not completing perhaps a master or the PhD, perhaps there are a lot of different certificate programs offered by the journalism schools around the world. It's not just in the United States. So you get a different perspective from the theoretical perspective as well. You also get to interact with a lot of veteran journalists. So you learn from their mistakes, from their experiences. I think it's a valuable input, but not everybody has the opportunity to make that jump. I mean, it's not easy, but definitely before you go into especially at the grad level, to the journalism school, then you better spend some time as a reporter on the field. So you learn, by experience first, and then perhaps pursue with the grad school. Then again, go back to the journalism field, as well.
Thank you so much. And I see next question is from Mercy. If you're available, would you like to unmute yourself? Mercy, if that is okay. Yes.
Hello, everyone. So my question is, how do you stand out as a freelance journalist? What makes you unique among the rest?
Well, I can jump in that as well. I think the content is the key in our profession. If you work on a very good, solid article with a lot of references, a lot of sources based on the facts, documentary evidence, perhaps if it's possible, then you generate very exclusive content that nobody else will be able to find anywhere else. I think that's how you stand out from the rest of the crowd. It's not easy. It's a very competitive field because everybody is looking for a scoop. Everybody is trying to dig, the story in a different perspective. It's a hardcore competition out there. But I mean, if you're committed and determined, you can do it by generating very solid, very exclusive, content-rich story. That's how you generate interest. I mean, I know from experience when I moved to Sweden, I didn't have a lot of resources, financial resources, logistical news sources as such. But as long as I keep generating a content which is not everybody else, will be able to relate, then you stand out from the rest of the crowd. And you get a lot of citation, a lot of calls, a lot of reporters actually approach you to get more information after you publish your story, because oftentimes they also work on a different angle on the same topic, but they didn't have perhaps the sources that you have, the documents that you have. So you actually expand your base and the network after you publish your story as well.
I would say too that this, for me personally, since I do podcasts as well, is that one way that I've tried to stand out, and I feel like I have, is by, utilizing exactly what you had said, but in an audio form, which is even more, we have investigative journalists on our team, but no one knows how to create this in audio or a podcast. We would like your help to be able to do this, or I'm presenting them with, I can both do the text-based article and I can do an audio version as well. So I have a 2-for-1 for you. And so I've sort of been able to leverage that, as opposed to maybe someone who has a similar story to me, but I also can do an audio version of this as well. So yeah, just building on other skill sets too, I found has been helpful for me.
Yeah, if I can just also add, as someone who has freelanced, I think it's super important as well. Sorry guys, just to apologize. I just lost internet connection, and that's why I'm choosing to switch off the video and have my photo on. I don't know what's happening, but for some reason, I'm just not getting good internet connection at the moment. And thank you to the team for stepping in. I appreciate you. If I can just share something else as a freelance journalist, I think what also happens is that, like our two colleagues have said, you are as good as what you can offer in the open market. There's no job security. There's not a monthly salary, irrespective of whether you slack at work or whether you don't produce 5 stories in a week. We get paid as freelancers for the work that we do, and that's how it is. That's your money. Your money is directly linked to your output. Unless you get a grant, then it's a bit different maybe, and that does exist, where the outputs aren't as directly linked maybe to like every dollar is linked exactly to how much work you do. But I think what's super important is to find what works for you. There are many ways of being a freelancer, right? So you might decide that you want to be an arts journalist. You might decide you want to be a health journalist, or you like writing about cars or fashion or music or anything that interests you. Follow that. And I honestly do think that you'll find work and you'll become known for what you do. And people will actually start seeking you out. Like Abdullah said, other journalists will even start contacting you. So that is so important, that you find your niche and that you find the topic that you want to write about and really build expertise in that. Because I think that is one way, of making sure that you become unique, to answer the question, So yeah, that was just some of the thoughts that I had. Chimri, would you mind continuing with the questions? Or if there are no other questions, we can also go back to the guests.
However you would like to, we have a couple more questions. Maybe I can call out the people who wrote them, and then you will take it on from there on.
That's perfect.
Perfect. Rachel has a question about data journalism. Hi, Rachel. I think this is for Jordan. Would you like to ask it yourself?
Yes. Hi, my name is Rachel Ndwati. I'm a broadcast journalist and digital entrepreneur. I have 2 questions. My first question has to do with subjectivity. So I understand that as a freelance journalist, you really have a lot of control over your story. And when you have a lot of control, you might be a bit subjective. So how do you ensure that you're not biased, in the sense that you're a freelance journalist, and ensure that the audience actually relates to the story as it is and not based on your own biases? That's the first question. The second question is on data journalism. I'm really interested in data journalism and data visualization techniques. So as a broadcast journalist, hopefully I'll get to understand the correlation between being a freelancer and incorporating data into your story, because we're not seeing that, especially here in Kenya. We're not seeing that in our local newsrooms. We're seeing only that in freelancers, and freelancers who are actually doing that is their capacity building for freelancers. Thank you.
I think I can jump to the first question, then pass to the ball to the Jordan on the visualization, which is not my field. On subjectivity, I think that's an excellent question, Rachel. You're right. When you're working as a full-time for a major media outlet, there is a lot of checks and the balances system, screening and the vetting, reviewing the articles. So you are not bound to make a lot of mistakes. But when you are on your own as a freelance journalist, which you are forced to generate a lot of content in a very short period of time, with a loss of constraint on the resources wise, that you can make mistakes. You also have a sort of view, sort of angle to the story. In my case, what I try to do is, after I write, from a slant, of course, from an angle to the story, I try to put the hard documents in the story as a PDF format. So if the readers doesn't like the way that I look at the data, I assess the documents, they can always go back to the original documents. They can read themselves, and they can make their own judgment. If you have a piece of video footage, for example, that you report in your story, I also put the video footage, as a raw footage with the subtitles in English, exactly translated from Turkish to English, what the speaker said. So that's how I try to balance when it comes to the problem of subjectivity. And it worked out pretty well in my case, because it also boosts your credibility, because you can put out the sources, the documents, the video footages, screenshots as such, that you actually analyze in your own story. You trust your own judgment, you trust your own assessment, so you're not afraid to put the evidence out there for everybody to see and examine and make on assessment on their own.
I agree. And it goes even to what I'm going to speak on for data journalism, as being transparent as possible and where you got the information. And in your data visualizations too, being able to have a line and a link to the original data set and just being clear, where am I getting all this information? I think that lends itself to transparency and credibility. And I will speak, so for data journalism, that I didn't go to school for that, and the ways that I've learned data journalism have been through mainly free resources online and collaborating with other journalists who have that skill set on projects. And I'm a huge fan of collaboration and a huge fan of trying to find folks who might have more of the skill set in an area that I'm not that skilled in, to be able just to even ask, can you look through and make sure that the numbers that I have are correct? Having a checks and balance as a freelancer, just finding another freelancer or someone else I trust that's a journalist that maybe I've worked with in the past, just to make sure that I am doing this correctly, that my interpretation is correct. And so I highly recommend that. There's an organization called the Investigative Reporters and Editors, and I've been able to do some boot camps, data boot camps with them, and online free resources that they have through being a member of that organization. And so that really is where I've learned a lot of my data skills, is through them. And Rachel, was there a specific question that you wanted to know about data journalism, resources or otherwise, that I can answer?
Yeah. Yes, I would love to know some of the, you just mentioned the platform in which you learned about data journalism, but for someone like me who hasn't really gotten to interact with a lot of, data journalism, and as a broadcast journalist, we do know that it's mostly audio and visual. So for me personally, it's for TV, and I'd really want to know which are the kind of platforms that I can actually access this skills, or rather be taught on how to incorporate data in my storytelling.
Yeah, I mean, I will emphasize that checking out the investigative reporters and editors group, and it's not just for people in the United States, it's for people from all over, and seeing about a membership with them or reaching out to them, because they do have a lot of members who are broadcast journalists, audio journalists, people from all different types of journalism. They just have a wealth of resources. I highly recommend. That is where I've learned a vast majority of my data skill sets, and I trust them in their knowledge base.
Thank you, Jordan. And I have also shared the resource that you emailed me. Would you like to briefly go over that and maybe how our participants here can facilitate such resources?
Yeah, so I had shared a list of email listservs. So these are free email newsletter type things that you can subscribe to. I have a few international ones, a couple of American ones, and this is definitely not all of the journalism related listservs that are out there. But for me, especially getting back into the freelance game, as I like to call it, but getting back into freelancing, these listservs have really helped with resources, data, and otherwise really help with finding connections and finding jobs. And just because you subscribe to listservs based in the United States, people are always asking for help or collaborations from folks in other countries too. It's, I would say subscribe to as many of these as possible if you are looking for work or collaborations or resources. And also, being able to utilize the listservs for asking your own questions as well. And I mean, if anybody needs help becoming a member of any of these, to feel free to reach out to me, or you have any questions about the listservs. But I've gotten so many jobs and collaborated with so many people through these listservs.
Thank you. Yazid, we have so many other questions coming along the way, but if you're ready to switch back,
Yes,
you can take
definitely.
it from there.
Definitely. I like all the questions, and we will want to answer as many of them as possible, because obviously the aim is to ensure that we, meet the needs of our participants. That's our main goal. Just to share also with participants, when we thought about this topic of freelance journalism, we know very well that the media industry, like many other industries, because of COVID and because of many other factors as well, coupled specifically to the media industry, there's been a lot of change, and not everybody's going to be able to find a full-time job. Not everybody's going to be able to get a regular salary doing journalism full-time. That is the unfortunate situation. But, there are other ways of being a journalist in the world as well. And there are only two people, well, myself included, it's three people who work as freelance journalists. And we would like to share with you, of course, how we do this. And Jordan and Abdullah, of course, both have shared their journey and their path of how they've come into freelance journalism. Now, Jordan, do you mind also sharing with us some of the, if I can, I want to also be very realistic about this, because I think it's important to give people guidelines, on freelance journalism. You had mentioned something along the lines of not having health insurance being an issue. Abdullah, of course, mentioned litigation, like legal action can be taken against you, and you don't have the support of this big organization behind you. Can you maybe share in your personal experience how you've navigated some of the challenges as a solo freelance journalist? You've mentioned organizational resources, but do you build sort of like camaraderie network, or do you also do other work when the going gets tough financially? Let's talk realistically about how we survive as freelance journalists,
Yeah, I mean, I'll say that, and being very frank, that a lot of the freelance work, especially that that's not audio related, I'm not getting paid, extremely well, especially living in New York City. And so some of the ways that I supplement my income and to be able to get these stories done is I apply for grant funding from different organizations for a project. And so, I mean, that's not going to work with every single article that I've pitched and gotten accepted, or every single article idea that I have. But I try to apply for as much grant funding for certain especially long form projects, and if it will require travel from me, because most of the time when an article that I've gotten accepted from a publication, they are not going to cover all of my travel expenses. So applying for grant funding has helped supplement that. I will say, I mean, I've been lucky enough to be able, though, to have an income that is 100% journalism based. A lot of my audio work is what I do when I'm trying to sort of supplement the lack of funding from my text-based articles that I've published. But yeah, I mean, I'm doing 100% journalism work to be able to survive in New York City. And I know not everybody can do that. And there have been times in my life, though, where, you know, I was a barista to supplement my income. I've had other jobs in the past, but at this point, my income is completely from journalism.
Wow, that's amazing. I mean, can we just start off by like saying you need to do a lot of stories just to pay rent in New York? It's crazy out there. Anyway,
You do.
yeah, I read that the rental prices in New York have gone up 70% post-COVID. That's insane.
You don't even want to know how much rent is where I live in Queens. Let's just say it is more than $2,000 USD.
Yeah. So, well, Jordan, hats off to you for being able to, you know, support yourself fully just off journalism, because it's very competitive out there. Let's be honest, being a freelance journalist, you're up against many, many other people who are in the profession freelancing as well. So yeah, hats off to you. Abdullah, when it comes to your work, you are based in Sweden, and you said you have had to go into exile because of the kind of journalism that you've done. Have you had to sort of broaden your output and the work that you do to make sure that you can still be a journalist as well?
I think that's an excellent question. Relates to your earlier question as well. I mean, we have to be very realistic when it comes to doing a professional, you know, freelance journalism. It's a tough job. It's very competitive market out there. And a lot of unemployed journalists, you know, in every country. You know, when I first arrived in Sweden, the first thing they mentioned to me, you know, there's a lot of Swedish journalists are, you know, trying to find a job. So is an inflation market for the journalism in that sense. But going back to your original comment at the outset, you know, if you find your niche, that makes you stand out from the rest of the crowd, you have a better luck, you know, a more chance to get noticed and, you know, get some income from the stories that you write. When you pitch a story, because you have a track record of, you know, good investigative journalists who had written, you know, good articles in the past, then your chances of getting accepted by, you know, a media outlet to publish your story in exchange for a fee, of course, is higher. But it's not easy. In my case, I am blessed with support from professional advocacy journalist organization, you know, in Germany and other places. So I generate my income to some extent from there, to some extent from the articles and the research reports that I have been doing for other organizations. But as a fallback position, and the last year, I started a completely unrelated, you know, a profession on the business side. So I have a fallback position just in case, you know, my professional journalism career is not generating enough revenue to support me and my family. So it's a balancing act. It's not easy. So you have to take those factors in when you start out the journey as a freelance journalist. But I mean, if you're committed, if you know how to do it and what to do it, you know, in this field, I think you'll be okay. But there's a lot of testing, you know, period you have to survive. And one of the reasons why I base in Sweden is not just universal healthcare insurance that you don't need to worry, unlike Jordan, but also when I mentioned the litigation, the lawsuits, because Sweden has a very robust laws, fundamental laws when it comes to protecting freedom of press. When I get sued by a company from London, for example, it's a very notorious place when it comes to defamation lawsuit in UK. It's coming up again with this oligarch, Russian oligarchs. They use their money to suppress the coverage about themselves. But in Sweden, it's not easy to win a case, defamation case against a journalist because of very strong tradition established in the culture and the history of the country, as well as in the legislation. So I think I opened a shop in a good place when I moved to exile, not just for the healthcare, but also coverage from the legal liability as well.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you for those answers, guys. Chemri, can we please look at any other questions?
Yes, sure. Let's keep on the order that I have the questions here on chat. Joseph is asking about the authenticity. I think Abdullah has shared a couple insights, but Joseph, would you like to raise it yourself and maybe differentiate your question or have your own comments, please?
Thank you. It's about an individual setting out to do a personal narrative about their own experience. And to that narrative, there's going to be a counter narrative. How do you determine the credibility of this narrative, of this story?
Well, I think that's a very valid question that we have to deal with all the time in our profession. You just stick to the facts and the truth. There are always a counter narrative. Most of the time, the propaganda, pieces, talking points uttered by the government officials or some, propaganda media outlets run directly or indirectly by the government entities. But that comes with the territory. I mean, you need to face that reality and keep doing what you do best. Stick to the facts, and that's what actually bothers those guys who run these propagandist outlets or propaganda pieces, because there is a lot of information out there. When you know how to investigate, how to look. Even in the government, resources, which they try to manipulate, you can find a lot of facts that you can, report. I think another point, I always mention this to my reporters when I was working in Ankara, especially those who are at the entry level. The main problem I used to see at the time, if a reporter is working on a diplomacy, on the foreign affairs, for example, he or she doesn't really care or focus about the business and economic aspects of the story. For example, they are reporting on the bilateral relation on two countries, but they simply focus on the remarks and the narrative from the government, people. There's a lot of information on the trade and the business wise. You just need to go to the statistical website, get the updated information, and you add that information to your story. So the next day, everybody is publishing, a significant development on the bilateral level at the foreign policy. Your story is going to stand out from the rest because you're the only one who put this trade data, which actually verify whether the bilateral relation at the political level is going well or not. So I think the cross-disciplinary aspect is also key in this field. So you try to make your story better, so you can stand out from the rest of the crowd, but you need to be able to understand how to read the data, because the economic data, the business data, inflation, unemployment as such, because so many different experts out there. Everybody, when they look at the data, they interpret differently. So you have to know your stuff, especially at the basic level. I think that's the reason why every grad school, they try to teach you the basics of the, economics and the business field. I think it's a valuable input in that sense. So cross-disciplinary experience is also crucial, I think, in this field.
Just to add to that, Abdullah, Joseph, just to add to answer the question, I think what's important is to remember that there's not always just one voice in a story. So remember, multiple source journalism is so important. Somebody's going to come to you with information and they're going to say to you, this is the truth. This is a fact. You have to publish this. This is important. You know, very often we also need to consider the motivations of people. So when somebody comes to you and says to you, this is a fact, you have to publish this, this is true. I'm always like, okay, well, why is this guy doing this? What's so important about the story for them, right? But then go and check your facts. Multiple source journalism is an art that has been dying in our profession. People go on Twitter, they take something that someone apparently said on Twitter and report it as a fact, and they don't even go and ask anybody else, is this true? What happened? Tell us your side of the story. So Joseph, there are many truths. There are many people with many, many, many truths. And you know what? The good journalist will find those different angles and show the different sides of those truths.
Yes, I'm glad that we switched the positions a little, so we get to learn more from your expertise too. So thank you for the opportunity. Maybe Jordan, do you want to add anything on?
I was just going to add that there was one case where I had someone tell me it was early in my journalism career, tell me their age, and my head thinking, you don't look as young as you're telling me at this point. And so I was just bored before I published the story, and I was like, you know what, I'm gonna look at birth records in this county and look up this person on a database. She completely lied to me. She was about 12 years older than she was. So it's a very basic idea of like, people might not be telling you the truth, and it's easy to then go back to a secondary source and look up and see if they're telling you the right information or not. But it was just very simple, this looking up her name in a database to show that this person had lied to me about their age, and so then making me think, what else were they potentially lying to me about, and what else would I need to look up? So I just wanted to share that even someone's age or where they say they're from potentially could be falsified, and it's easy to look up that information sometimes. So
Thank you, great checklist points. Let's move to Abu Nasser. Rana, I see your question, but let's first give the opportunity to other colleagues to raise them too. I'll come back to your question if we still have time. Abu, would you like to unmute yourself? I know the speakers have briefly touched upon these two, but I just want to give the opportunity, maybe if you would like to share some comments or add another perspective to your question. If you're available to speak, yes.
Thank you. I have a question. You know, the freelance journalism is a very much risk. Sometimes when government interference in many other things about the government activities, which is indicate corruption and other matters. In this situation, if I example in our country, you know, the government has a DSA law that's called Digital Security Act. Under this law, in our country, many journalists harassed or arrested, or they have many pressure in very much situation. In this position, what can a freelance journalist do when government interferes the cover the story which he makes the corruption or others items? This is the question for.
Well, I can start by saying, well, this is a hazardous job. Let's be realistic, especially if you're writing on corruption or criminal activity about very powerful people with a lot of resources, or government people. Then you need to wait for a backlash. They're gonna take some action. They try to undermine your credibility, which is the least they can do with spreading a lot of fake information about your story or about your profile. And in the worst case, they come after you with the violence. I experienced, at the personal level 2 years ago, even in Sweden, I was attacked right in front of my house by 3 guys. And I never saw them before, but it has to do with one of my writings, either about some of the notorious organized crime syndicates that stretches across Europe, or perhaps the Turkish government entity, which I have been writing very critically for the last decade. So you have to accept that fact. You can take some measures at the personal level. You can approach to the authorities that their mandate is to provide security and safety for you in the country that you live. But you have to accept the fact that all those security measures, they may fall apart, and you may be a victim of attack. This is the case, unfortunately. I mean, we are just the messengers. We have only pen, we have a microphone, we have a platform on the audio broadcast side or the website. But unfortunately, in some cases, the journalists are getting killed in Europe and other places, in your own country as well. And I don't trust any government in that sense, because all the governments, they try to manipulate. They try to put a good face about what they do. So when they pass legislation like the ones that you mentioned, digital security acts, similar cases took place in other countries as well. In many cases, the motivation behind those legislation is to actually suppress the critical, independent, perhaps even opposition coverage of the government. So they use, those legislation to go after the critical and independent journalists. It's not easy to fight off against those forces, but we are doing very important job. It's not just a private field we are working, because what we do is a public interest job. We try to expose either government entities or the powerful people on the private industry when it comes to criminal activity, organized crime, corruption, graft, and as such. So they pissed off when you write and publish and expose them. And you pay a price sometime, unfortunately, because of that.
I just want to add to that. And Chimre, thank you for taking the questions. You are right. It definitely allows me to participate as a freelance journalist as well. I think when you're hosting the discussion, you feel a bit inhibited to share some of your own experiences. If I can just share with our participant from Bangladesh, and it would be great also when you ask a question, if you could tell us where you are phoning in from, that would be awesome, just to give everybody an idea of the diversity of our group. Someone needs to mute. Yeah, if you could just tell us where you're phoning in from, because I think our strength is in our diversity, and that is how we can learn from each other globally. To share with our participants from Bangladesh, there are various programs being run by non-profit organizations, such as the Committee to Protect Journalists and others, that are helping journalists in volatile or life-threatening situations to publish their news. So you don't have to publish it directly in your country, but the internet is, by all intents and purposes, the internet is meant to be more of a democratic space. We know that is not always the case, but it's possible to get your stories out to a reading public and to ensure that we do not suffer in silence in countries where our governments are trying very hard to silence us and oppress people. So please do also look out for alternative resources where you can publish your work as a journalist.
Thank you, Yazid. Jordan, would you like to add anything else?
I just wanted to add that in my experience working, I mean, the I guess scariest or most intimidating folks that I've interviewed in the past have been white nationalists, and I've done some work on white nationalism and accelerationism in the United States. And the thing that I thought about before I was working on this is my mother and some of my family members back in my small town in Texas that potentially could be at a greater risk than me here in New York City talking about these issues. So there was a resource, I'm not certain if it's only in the United States, but there's a resource that you do have to unfortunately pay for, but it's called Intellius. And there's also a Delete Me. Delete Me is also a paid service, but the idea of Delete Me is being able to try to go through and scan for all of your information, your address, your phone number, personal information online, and that this service would delete your personal information from sites online that would make it harder for someone to find out where you live and how to contact you and your family members. And so there's other resources like that too, but I just wanted to flag that thinking about what is out there before you do investigations that might put yourself and your family members at risk, and see what possible avenues you could go down to lessen the amount of information about yourself online that could help. So just wanted to flag that.
Thank you so much. Just like everyone on the panel underlined, access to information is really the essence of promotion of human rights in this age. And the distinction between journalism and human rights advocacy is a really gray area at this moment in our modern life. So we do document an increasing level of harassment, all forms of violence, especially towards women journalists too. This is a very, very important topic, and we have came to know many times, both in Ukraine and Afghanistan, the critical role that journalists are playing to document atrocity crimes against humanity. So unfortunately now you are on the front line to raise more awareness on what is going on in conflict zones as well. So unfortunately we are aware of the increasing violence, and hopefully the intergovernmental organizations will also take a better lead, so to say, to protect journalism and right to access free and credible information. So Alia from Bahrain has a regional specific question. Alia, would you like to unmute yourself if you're available? If not, I can just ask it. Okay. As mentioned, this is a regional specific, but maybe you might have any tips or insights. How does an Arab journalist reach other foreign language channels? Or maybe your experience on reaching out to different regions besides your own focus area.
I can share something on that very quickly, if that's okay.
Sure.
So I used to live in Yemen, and I was reporting on a lot of conflict in Yemen. And at the time, you know, it was so important for me to, well, firstly in Yemen, I was working at a newspaper in Yemen. That's how I got into Yemen, just to give you some information on that. And I was working as the managing editor of a newspaper that came out twice a week. And that put me in a newsroom, and it put me in a situation where I had many, many different contacts and all kinds of interesting stories that I could do as a freelancer. And if I can share with you how I was able to get contacts, was literally the internet. You know, sometimes you literally just have to go out and do a bit of research online and reach out to people. So you have to, I guess, put in a bit of research and look at the kinds of media platforms that are out there. And I guess even platforms such as this, networking, right? So speaking to colleagues in other parts of the world and building those networks are also important. I think when you have a good story, the good story will sell itself. So you pitch the story, you know, as freelancers, we do this all the time. You communicate with an editor, or you find out who to speak to at a certain publication. It might not be the editor of the publication or the news channel. It might be let's say it's a political story, so there's a political editor. It might be a feature story, there's a features editor, and you find the right person. You pitch the story. If they say no, you go to the next person. That's really the hard work of it. You need to do the research and you need to be contacting people. Yeah, that's my experience. And just to end off on that, like, I mean, through doing that, I had articles published actually in Swedish media. I did some live crossings for radio and TV stations. I also, I wrote for a whole range of different media organizations, even in the UK. So yeah, it's possible to definitely take your work beyond your own country. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'm sure Abdullah has great insights too, as he's working on all the audience development for his own platform too. Any insights or tips, Abdullah, that you would like to share?
Well, I think it's pretty much covered, the basic, base when it comes to cross-border, reaching out to the different audience. I think in the last couple of years, that topic has been amplified, especially, from the professional and advocacy organization in providing grants to journalists who work on different countries. I think that's an excellent pattern that we see, because you need, sometimes you're actually forced to find a partner in other countries to be able to apply for a grant, which is good. So, I mean, for Arab journalists, they can also, exercise the same pattern as well. A lot of experience when it comes to covering those regions. It always on the public agenda. They can collaborate with other investigative journalists for great articles, and they can even get funding and the grants for doing so. And a lot of opportunities out there. You just need to Google on the web, find out different websites, not just organization, but even the intergovernmental organization require for investigative journalists to work as a team. And cover specific issues across different countries. I think that is the that is the way to go in that sense.
Thank you, Karima. I see your hand up, but I have two brief questions that I would like to turn to before giving the floor to you. Elizabeth, I believe your question is indeed covered. You asked for the organizations that fight for the rights of journalists, but would you like to add any comments, or do you have any additional perspectives that you would like to raise? You can unmute yourself if you're available to speak up. Okay. Jordan has already shared some links. Okay. Before Karima, I have Rahma waiting in chat, so let's turn to his or her question. I'm so sorry I cannot see your picture at this moment, but Rahma, please.
Hi, hello. Hope you are doing all well. You hear me?
Yes, we do hear you.
Yeah. So my name is Rahma. I'm a postgraduate. I got a master's degree recently in journalism, but my BA degree and my other master's degree has nothing to do with the journalism. So I feel like my experience in journalism is a little bit limited, especially in the field work experience. As I had like a small internship of just 1 week, I'm trying to gain experience, but as you know, as a fresh graduate, it's really hard to get even an internship. Now I'm based in Qatar, so with the World Cup, it's really difficult to have. Like I got accepted for 2 internships, but I couldn't like pursue the next steps. So for my situation, for example, how can I get like experience online as a freelance, and how can I start like the career of a freelance journalist?
So when I mentioned the email listservs, that would be one particular way of being able to introduce yourself on some of those and being able to say what your skill sets are and what your interests are. That I've seen a lot of folks who have recently graduated from like internationally going on the US listservs and asking if any journalists from the US are working on stories based in their home country, or if there are ways that they can collaborate. And it's not just, you would be the translator, for instance, or something like that, be more of an actual collaboration. Journalists in the US is interested in a story is working on an actual formal collaboration between you and that journalist. I've seen those conversations happen on those email listservs. And so I would say potentially like that would be a good start, and just as a way to introduce yourself to the rest of the community.
Hey, Rahma, where are you phoning in from?
You're muted. Please unmute first.
Sorry, I am from Algeria, but I live in Qatar for now.
So the only reason I'm asking is because one of the ways that you can get into journalism is to look at the media around you. I know it's difficult in this climate to maybe get a paid internship, but sometimes you have to do a bit of free work to get in the door, you know? So maybe have a look at whether it's a community radio station, a community newspaper, any form of media that can get you in, you know? So that you can start networking and hopefully get other work as well. I remember starting out as a student journalist, I worked for anybody. I was like, community media. I mean, fortunately, I went into a journalism program where we did an internship. So, you know, we did an internship for 1 year at a newspaper, and I was placed at a daily newspaper. So every day I was getting published and I was doing this work as a student journalist and really getting to learn the skills, you know. And I think that's where you need to, it sounds to me that's where you are at. You want to do the job and you want to get into the field. So start where you are at, you know. So there are people around you, network, go to events, meet people. I don't know, like contact the editors, contact the media, say, hello, I'm a graduate, I want to write, or I want to do radio journalism, or, you know, I want to come spend a week at your place. Can I come learn with you? Can I do stuff with you? You have to be very proactive, you know, the doors will open.
Well, I can make some comments from the experience as well. I think the best way is to approach the established media outlets. When I was executive editor for a newspaper in Istanbul for a while, I also run the internship program for a young journalist at the entry level. I used to, screen them, interview them, and help them out enter into the profession. It's not easy job, especially for a small media outlets, which with a limited resources and human resources as well. It's not easy for them to manage the internship program because it takes a lot of time, energy, and resources. But for a large established organization, they have a wider horizon. They have a future perspective. Perhaps they want to train their own reporters at the entry level by running this internship program. I think Yazid is right. Just polish up your resume, CV, send it out all the media outlets. So you may be lucky in getting into one of them. I think it is great experience because some of the people I spotted on the internship program later turn out to be great investigative journalists because you send them to the field, you work with them on a stories, you try to teach them, and some people are very talented, very capable, very quick learners. I mean, they they were groomed to this job. Not everybody. I mean, for example, if you hire 10 interns, perhaps only 1 or 2 stand out from the rest of the crowd. And you said, well, I can recruit this one guy or the one girl out of 10 people. But it is a great contribution to the journalism industry. I think I learned a lot from that experience, but you need to approach, established media organization definitely not a freelance journalist. We don't have time and the resources to manage that.
Thank you. Thank you, Abdullah.
Thank you so much.
And thank you for the question. And Farhana would like to share her experience, but if we can keep it very brief, I would like to turn to first Karima and then Dunya later on. And I believe that will conclude our time for today. Farhana, please, the floor is yours, but very briefly. If you can unmute yourself. Yes.
Thank you. Thank you. Actually, I am little sick, so my camera am off. Huh?
That's okay. No problem.
Okay. Actually, I am become so emotional. Please don't mind. I was last 10 years. I was a TV journalist, and I achieved 5 fellowship and award in my country from my TV channel. But in the COVID-19 situation, I was lost my job. The issue is that I was victim sexual harassment, and I protest against the news editor just before the pandemic. And as a case regarding sexual harassment and justice against me is under court, it has been hard for me to get a new job in the male-dominated Bangladesh media. Then I become upset. In 2020, I am trying to doing freelance journalism. But in my country, Bangladesh, freelance journalism is not valuable, and a freelance journalist is not a important journalist in our country. Yet I am try, and now I am doing internationally freelance journalism with ADN, etc. And recent I am a fellow of Asia Journalism Fellowship 2022. It's my achievement, but I am till now I am upset because in my country, what are you doing? I'm said I am a freelance journalist. What is freelance journalist? In my country, I am not an important journalist. In my Bangladesh, I come to join in journalist organization. Last Dhaka Reporters Unity, National Press Club, I come to join. I am. Any freelance journalist come to join in a journalist organization in Bangladesh. In this situation, actually, I want to some suggestion from you all. Thank you.
Well, Farhana, thank you so much for sharing your case, and I'm sorry for the grave violations that you faced. Just before I give the floor to the speakers, maybe for very brief reflections on what you said, I just shared a link in the chat, Women in Journalism. That is a great international coalition supporting women journalists on the ground facing different forms of violations, harassments, and you can either share your case with them or have them reported your situation in their routine monthly, yearly papers. Just that would be great if you can get in touch with them too. But thank you for the courage to share what you have been going through. Very, very brief reflections from our speakers, because I want to give the floor to Karima too, if you would like to add anything else. Yazid?
Chemre, I'm going to be very brief. I just want to share that it is common in many countries that unfortunately freelance journalists are not regarded as being real journalists. And this is because the assumption is that you are not working for an organization, you do not represent an organization. So freelance journalism is not, though, about the fact that you work for an organization. Freelance journalism is you are doing good journalism, irrespective of whether you are working full-time or not. So I think that's something important that we must remember. Freelance journalists are still journalists. They're still doing the job as anyone, and sometimes even better than someone working full-time at an organization that gives them more credibility. That's all I want to say.
Thank you. If you don't mind, let's turn to Karima too, because we're about to be over with our time. Karima, please.
Hi.
Hi.
I want to ask you. I like journalism, but I did not find an opportunity to study it at the university. But I try to do online courses and always read in order to practice it in a professional way. Is this enough to do this? To be journalism? Is this enough to be journalist?
Go for it, Jordan. Go, then I'm just going to respond very briefly as well.
Just briefly, yes, I feel like that can be enough. I'm under the assumption, and I will scream from the rooftops, that you don't need a degree in journalism necessarily to be a journalist. But I will go back to our earlier discussion too about lending credibility. And I think that education, getting a degree in journalism, does lend credibility to you as a journalist. But I do not think that that is the end all be all to be a good journalist, is a university degree.
Yeah, I'm just going to say that being a journalist is not the same as being a doctor or an accountant. It's not the kind of skills that you need to learn. It's not a one size fits all kind of thing. Journalism, I've seen people come from teaching into journalism. I've seen people come from science careers into journalism. So the educational aspect, it can give you the framework of the profession that you're going into. So we study things like media law, we study things like ethics, and we study things like the skills as well. You do lots of writing exercises. So you're building your skills in this profession called journalism. But there's certainly not just one way of doing it. You could also just go off and find a job or an internship and get started in the profession. You can learn many things while doing journalism. So yeah, that's my conclusion, I guess.
Thank you so much, Yazid. Abdullah and Jordan, if you don't mind, I would be very grateful if you can share your emails with our participants for further questions, if they would like to get in touch with you with any questions or so, because our time is up, and I know all of you have other commitments too. Jordan has already typed it, and Yazid already has it in his underneath picture. Thank you, Abdullah, for the email. And Mehmet has some reminders and follow-up notes too. So let's turn to Mehmet, and we will be wrapping it up.
All right, thank you so much, Cemre. So basically, we wanted this experience, not only experience sharing, but also in hands-on experience. So that's why we will have a project. It's on writing a news article. And I know that some of you are already writing articles in different news outlets, but this is an opportunity for you to pitch a story. And so basically, we would like to publish your article on the JWF's blog, but at the same time, it's a good, experience or opportunity to maybe, publish your articles in different news outlets or websites. So basically, this is not a mandatory, but this is recommended. And so we would like you to investigate a topic of interest. It could be on press freedom, freedom of speech or expression, or it could be human rights related issues, but not limited to this. It could be any other topics of interest as well. But of course, we would like this to be original and in-depth contribution to the public knowledge on social, economic, and environmental issues. And we would like you to support, of course, your arguments with, some data, right? Some data. You could interview interview people, individuals in doing so. And we would like you to, pitch your story. It could be on social media before it is published as well. Of course, we would like you to address the media ethics and consideration as well. And if you include a bibliography and a reference, that would be very helpful. So again, so this is a news article experience. And so we would like to encourage you to, to participate in this. And, we would like this to be published in different media outlets, but of course, at least, we would like to publish it on the JWDF blog. And also, I would like to thank, our speakers for sharing, their experience, their knowledge, and I also learned a great deal about freelance journalism. And thank you so much for all the participants for joining us today. Maybe Cemre, you can talk about the next session for Wednesday.
Thank you so much, Mehmet. And I have seen a couple questions about the recording of the sessions. Yes, we do record the sessions, but because this is a certificate program, we require participation in 5 of the sessions, unless you inform me ahead of time with any prior work commitments or emergencies. But we will post the recordings after we conclude all the sessions and deliver the certificates of participation. And besides that, we will have our second session. We will have, again, great experts, journalists from Germany, India, and South Africa. So it's going to be an interesting combination of perspectives from different regions. But thank you so much, Jordan and Abdullah. This is what really we had in mind when we designed this program, to create a platform, a meaningful platform where everyone can engage and learn from your expertise and hands-on experience, really. And over to you, Yazid, for last remarks. If we still have you with us, Yazid, maybe he's off. Okay, I believe
I'm still
yes.
here, but I'm still here, but I thought I think you guys have said it all. I'm happy. Today worked out very well. Thank you, Cemre. Teamwork is dreamwork. This has been an awesome start, and I'm looking forward to the next session. In fact, I've seen Marika online here as well. Marika is one of our next panelists. We'll be talking about the intersection of religion and journalism and peace building. So I'm looking forward to that. Thank you, everybody.
Well,
thank you so much
for having us here. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Bye, y'all.
Bye, everyone.
Bye,
thank you so
guys.
much.
Bye-bye.